All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 5:30 and I'm calling the regular meeting workshop of the board to order. We have 4 of us here right now. We're missing Director Lowry. I will say this is kind of a wonky week because we have a meeting on Tuesday instead of Monday. And so we're going to try to, he might be joining us in a little bit, but we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we'll just dive into the superintendent report.
Thank you, President Anderson Pearson and board directors. Tonight we have several reports from the district, but we get to start with something that has been near and dear to my heart and to my superintendency, which is student voice. And so tonight we have our Superintendent Youth Advisory Council update as presented by Amari Davis, our interim director for equity and community engagement. And I will ask Amari to come forward and to introduce her young folks.
Don't be shy. Don't be nervous. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Board of Directors. So good to be with you all this evening. As Superintendent Banner said, my name is Amari Davis, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Interim Director of Equity and Community Engagement. I'm so excited to be here with you all tonight, more so because we've got some amazing student representatives here from our Superintendent Youth Advisory Council. I will give them an opportunity to introduce themselves here quickly.
Hi, my name is JL. I've been a part of SYAC for my third year, my final year, and it's really been something very special and something I've been very happy to be a part of.
Hello, my name is Kasia, and I go to Harrison Prep, and I really love SYAC.
Hello, I'm Malcolm Munoz, and I go to CP, and this is my first time doing SYAC this year.
And in addition to our representatives up here, I also wanted to give a shout out to Chase Washington, who is in the audience with us, also representing SYAC and here to support the presenters tonight. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. Just starting with kind of the mission and the vision of what SYAC is. And so if we could have the next slide, please. I don't know who's clicking. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Awesome. So just a presentation overview for us. We'll start out with, we did our student introductions, and then an overview of what SYAC is, our mission, our vision, our goals, the community projects that the students engaged in this year, their outcomes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and pictures and all that fun stuff. All right, so what is SYAC? The Superintendent's Youth Advisory Council is a dynamic group of 43 students in grades 9th through 12th, representing all 4 high schools in the Clover Park School District. As a member of this esteemed council, these students offer meaningful insights and feedback directly to the superintendent on a variety of district-wide topics, ranging from transportation and curriculum to nutrition and other areas that shape all aspects of the student experience. In our district, we deeply and firmly believe in the inherent value and unique brilliance of every one of our students. And as such, we are committed to creating spaces where our students' voices are heard, respected, and empowered to drive positive change within our schools and the broader community. The Superintendent's Youth Advisory Council is just one of the many ways that we uphold this commitment and support our students in becoming thoughtful, engaged leaders today and in the future. All right, so jumping right in. So I want to remind you guys, yes, we have the slides and our board directors can read the slides and what you guys have done this year, but I also want you guys to be intentional about speaking to not just what's on the slides, right? But the ways that being a part of the different community project groups, so mental wellness, our nursing home visits, and our vaping awareness, what it meant for you to be a part of those groups, how being a part of SYAC has impacted your experience in the district, and then also how you want this to inform who it is that you become in your future endeavors. Okay, so we'll start with mental wellness and we'll start with Marco.
My experience at SYAC really changed my luck when I came to the district. Before I really had obviously no insight of how things ran. After joining SYAC, I got a better sense of why this school district ran as it is, and maybe like understand a lot more of it. For mental health, wellness, I loved my group. I walked alongside with many of my good peers, and some of the stuff that we got to draft out for the next upcoming year was a presentation with activities called Mental Health Day. We'll targeted middle school and elementary schools on just knowledge of mental health and how can you relieve stress and how you can deal with it. Another thing we worked on with mental health is doing teacher lessons. So teachers can get a better understanding why mental health happens, how does it work, and how it can affect a person no matter what their background. And just mental health should obviously be in a full aspect, and everyone should know about many different kinds of mental health.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marcus. And then with Marcus is sharing about what they've been creating in each of their groups. So eventually the hope is that this will be able to come before teachers through a presentation, teachers and staff across the district, so they'll be able to present and take the ideas that the students had in that group and bring it forward so that that can be implemented across our buildings. And also have some targeting displays and graphics within the building so that the students in each of our buildings know, for one, what mental health is, obviously in a grade appropriate fashion, right? In a way that they can understand, with language that they can understand, that they know that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to ask for support, and then also who those people are in their buildings as well, who they can go to. Okay, and then we'll have Kasia go next, or no, we'll have Jay go next for our, Kasia go next for our nursing homes, sorry.
Okay, yes. So for our goals for the nursing home was ultimately just to bridge the gap between the older generation and the newer generation and also find a way to connect with the older individuals. And also we just wanted to let the residents know that they really mattered and that there were people who really cared about them, such as the youth. And we definitely seen that outcome because we visited the Washington Veterans Home in Port Orchard for like 6 hours, and that was a great experience because we played Jeopardy with them and we just saw them light up with smiles. They were having fun, they were laughing, and I felt like that was just a great way to let them know that we really care about them and we want to put in our efforts for them. And it was just a great way to show that. And for me, that really impacted me because I really love communicating with others. Like that's something I'm really passionate about. And I felt like this was a great way to gain wisdom and also to learn more about their stories as well. And just that was a time for me to really just listen instead of doing all the talking. So it was a great way for me to just connect with them. And SYAC really helped me because I felt like I was able to advocate for what I was passionate about from a youth perspective. And that was something that I felt was important. And I feel like this connects to what I want to do in the future because I do want to continue communicating with others. I do want to continue learning from older individuals. And I do want to keep letting people know that they matter. So, yes.
And then in addition to that Charleston home, or the Washington Veterans Home visit, there was also some goodie bags that were created for the students to send out to the community, and cards and keepsakes for the residents at our different facilities to just know that they are seen, that they're heard, respected, and valued within our community. And hearing back from the different, the leadership team at those buildings, that meant the world to their residents to be able to have the students come, engage with them, ask questions, see their wartime photos, and just know what their stories were and feel like their stories were not forgotten. So wonderful experience doing that. Shayla?
So last year, I got to participate with the fentanyl awareness project that we did. And in doing so, I got to advocate about something that's very near and dear to my heart. The effects of fentanyl and all of that on families is something that I think is very, very important and something that should be shed light on, as well as something that impacts our generation now would be vaping. It's something very normalized in our schools and something that as a community and as a school district, I thought was something that we could talk about and bring light to. It's something that is all the way from 6th grade to 12th grade. It's targeting kids, and it's something that is very scary, and we don't know the long-term effects of it. And just understanding and researching everything that we did to put together the Vaping Awareness Project was very insightful and very informational for me, and just something that I can continue to advocate about, and something that, you know, I would like to go to the bathroom without smelling strawberries. I would love to go to the bathroom without having to step over girls who are doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And I think that's something that the schools and students should be telling other students not to do. It's something that as a generation, we need to not normalize, and that we need to accept that when people choose not to do that, that's something that they choose not to do. And also supporting those who are struggling and have been targeted, and understanding that, yes, we are children, but we also have to realize that some of the things that we do affect us long term. And I believe that with SYAC, I was able to realize that and advocate for that, and just help other students. It's a way for me to leave my mark and to advocate about something that I feel so deeply about. And SYC gave me a space to use my voice and to share my voice and to bring my voice out, because I would say I did not start as a very outgoing student in the Clover Park School District, but as I grew in my high school journey, SYC was someplace that I liked to call a sweet space, somewhere that I was comfortable sharing my opinion and sharing my thoughts. And so I really do appreciate the past 4 years and everyone that has helped me through that journey.
And lastly, I want to speak to the culmination of the vaping awareness, the committee's work. And so that will take place at the Lakewood AMC Lakewood Mall, where we will have the 3-part mini series where you'll be able to see the outcome of the videos that were put on by our wonderful students. I'm always so impressed by each of our groups. This is now our 2nd year of doing community projects. And the eloquence and the brilliance that the students bring, and the intentionality around, again, being within the community and having impact. And I really do feel like these students, not just within SYAC, right, but the SYAC students in particular, are so much of a manifestation of the pillars that we have set for our students, of the kind of learners that we want them to be, not just, you know, in their education, but just as individuals and active contributing members of society. And so I'm so excited to continue to do this work with you guys, and we hope to see you at the vaping awareness screening on June 3rd. I now want to give some time for some questions, if our board members had any questions for our students.
Good evening. It was wonderful to hear all of your stories and how involved that you've gotten, and the way that you've kind of found your voice and your presence and your passions through the advisory council. And I just want to thank you for being leaders in your schools and leaders in our districts. And I know that you will eventually be leaders in our community.
I completely agree with Dr. Kim. I did have a couple questions though, and I apologize that I don't have one for each of you. So when you visited the nursing homes, I was just curious if any of you wrote down their stories. Yeah.
Not necessarily any people that I know of. We were more of just like
Listening.
listening and just responding like, oh, that was great, and just listening to them. We didn't necessarily write it down, but it did stick with us in our hearts.
Of course it did. Thank you. And then my other question, it's about the vaping awareness. So when you say, and I'm probably paraphrasing and I'm doing it wrong, okay? My question is about, are there other students at school that are trying to get people to vape and to sell those products to them while on campus?
I would say that yes, that is something that you do see in school. I mean, I would say my freshman year was a year that vaping became very big in schools, and I hadn't seen it before then because we were in COVID. So we came back freshman year, and everyone is, you know, in a new surrounding, in a new area with different people that they've never known. So it's something that, you know, you might see older kids, this is cool, you should do this. And which is why we did aim to do vaping awareness and bring awareness to the fact that no, it's not cool. There are other ways to be cool by, protecting your health and protecting your body.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, I commend you very much. The question I have is for our seniors, because in a couple weeks you will, well, not a couple weeks, I guess a week you'll be, just 1 week you'll be out of here. I'd like to know from your time in the program, what is the biggest takeaway that you will take and try to continue on your next part of your journey?
I believe the biggest takeaway for me was how important collaboration is, because everybody has so many different perspectives and ideas that are so great. And I feel like just collaborating with others is a great way to just expand your own thoughts and also to really like get to your goals.
For me, my biggest takeaway would probably be to continue to use my voice to advocate for those who might not be able to, as well as being in community spaces and having input. I think that's something that a lot of people are not taught to do. And through SYAC, I've been taught and been shown great leaders and how to be a good leader and how to delegate and how to listen to others and advocate for others. And I think the biggest thing for me that brought me the most joy out of SYAC was being able to see the impact that I had at school. So yeah, that was my biggest takeaway probably.
Do you mind if I expand on that? Because one of the things that we intentionally do is try to keep a through line of students, right? So we'll bring new students on. And so Marco, you're in 11th grade going into 12th grade. Can you speak to the same question in terms of what's one of the biggest things that you'll take, not obviously this year in graduation, but into your senior year of high school?
The biggest thing I can take away from this experience is really the effort and teamwork that goes into it. Because you're not just walking with 2, 3, 4 people. You're walking with up to 10 people. So it's like everyone has their own little piece of it. And so it gets done really quickly, and there's so much detail and thought put into it.
Few comments and then a question. I think the 3 community projects here that we're seeing tonight are amazing. Obviously mental health, mental awareness, and I hope that our students, they can use the tools that are available to them to be stronger, rather than, I know, everyone deals with their own mental health, but how can we use the tools that we have to launch our youth into, a positive path forward. So I'm obviously always happy to see that as a focal point. And then the nursing homes, I love that because my grandma, she was 95 and she ended up going into a assisted living, I guess. And all those folks want is for someone to chat to. And, when young folks go in, it brightens their day. And I really do love saying that. My biggest regret was when I was in high school. Well, not my biggest regret, but one of my biggest class regrets was we got to choose from, preschoolers to elementary school to senior citizens. And of course, the little kids are so cute. Every year I chose to go into a classroom where now I would have totally changed that, because I think you can make a huge impact with the elderly as well. So I'm also, for putting preschools in nursing homes, but that's not here nor there. But I think it helps them live a longer life. And then I do have a question about the vaping. I'm excited to see the video that comes out. I know that it's targeted to youth. Vaping was not a thing. Either I was living in a different land or it wasn't a thing when I was in high school. And yes, when you see adults carrying vapes, I'm kind of like, wow, that looks really goofy. Are you not too old to be doing that? But then I think, okay, yeah, it is obviously targeted towards younger kids, but I guess how is it targeted? I guess I have no idea because, it doesn't really advertise. So what do you think is the most appealing thing towards the youth that makes it so popular, I guess.
And I want to open this up to each of you because even though you may not have served on
Mhm.
the committee, right, you still have experienced the impact of what it looks like with your peers and in your individual school community. So whoever would like to answer that question, I want to make that available to you. Do you want to start?
Okay. We're too nice here. But I would say the biggest thing that I've seen is the smell of it is very nice. Sometimes you wouldn't expect like smoke to smell like that, I guess. It's not smoke, it's vapor, but you still wouldn't expect to smell cotton candy or they do smells that are very childlike and very sweet and very candy. And that's something that, kids love candy. And so I would also say they make them in different shapes, different sizes. There can be teddy bear ones. There can be ones that are pink and blue. And they've gotten really creative as to how to market it towards kids. And it is also their marketing strategy because we don't know the long-term effects of that. And because of that, they are able to target kids and say, well, how do you know it's bad? You don't know it's bad. So that's one of the ways that they can do that, I guess. We know the effects of cigarettes. We know the effects of things like that because they've been along for a lot longer. Since vaping is so new, we don't know the effects. So kids say, well, we don't actually know what's going to happen, so why not? And with peer pressure at schools and, being in a space where a lot of people do choose to do that, there's a lot of pressure to do that, I would assume.
Question. I'm not promising this because it's not a thing, but I know that vaping detectors are a thing for bathrooms. Obviously, there's only so much money. There's a ton of bathrooms. But do you think that that would be a deterrent, or do you think that folks would or students would just find another path, I guess, because the vapes are so small. I mean, sometimes I see kids out on the bus stop. I would like to make a U-turn, but I'm like, okay, I'll let the school handle that. But do you think that would be beneficial if you don't know the vape, so you can detect the vaping smoke and then it would alert, whoever is responsible for monitoring it?
I think that's a really great idea, and that should be implemented into bathrooms, especially at CP. I know from experience, there's just a lot of boys who go in there on vape during passing, during class. So I get that, but I don't think that would really help necessarily, because a lot of these kids vape in groups and pass, like those most of the time one vape and they just pass it around. So if that gets detected, how can we find who actually owns the vape instead of like incriminalizing everyone who's in that bathroom? Because some people who are not even a part of that vaping situation are just washing their hands, but now they'll pull it out of the bathroom because they were in there at the same time as the people vaping.
And so I want to share that some of these nuances, right, the questions of kind of like the problem solving and how do we come up with like a co-design of sorts of how we address these issues, because we're seeing in real time, right, like a student perspective from an adult perspective, and there's some layers that we miss, obviously, because they're experiencing this on a daily basis, right? And so along with the vaping awareness video series that we'll have, there will also be a campaign across secondary. Will they be able to present this information and the different advisories and be able to actually do some of this brainstorming together around what are next steps that, again, aren't unintentionally, putting other students at harm because they may just be in a surrounding area, right? And just doing it in a way that, for one, what I've heard from all of them right around this topic is that there's always this piece of compassion, right? We recognize there needs to be guidelines for schools, but we also want to make sure that our peers are cared for and getting the support that they need, because if they are vaping, there's generally a reason behind it. And so I'm excited for us to continue to brainstorm and have those conversations and for the board to be able to hear about that as we continue in this campaign, not just for the remainder of this school year, but also into the next school year and beyond.
Say, in my experience, this is not a Clover Park School District problem alone. This is happening pretty much everywhere. So don't feel alone. I walk into restaurants at a school district nearby, and I'm an administrator, and I see it all the time as well. I clear them out. I don't discipline them typically unless they come back, and then I take their vapes away and call their parents. But for the most part, it's not a huge consequence right now. I do think the bigger issue you guys are addressing really is the vaping. Like back in the day, they got smoking kind of out of the schools by saying smoking makes you smell bad and look bad and all these other things. And they made, students kind of understand that there's an issue with your image if you do continue smoking. The problem with vaping though is that strawberry smell and the cherry smell and the vanilla and everything else, it makes you actually smell pretty good. You don't smell bad anymore. So I think it's going to be a much tougher problem now to get vaping out of teenagers' hands. And so I look forward to whatever you guys come up with and helping along the way too. So thanks for all you're doing.
All right, awesome job. Before you guys leave, we're going to kind of do a little break and take a picture with the board, if that's okay. And then I also wanted to say that I really appreciated the nursing home group not using me as their elderly model for bridging. They tried. Okay, Leanna's going to call us all over so that we can do a picture with all of our students.
And I saw that there were some SYA students that joined us as we were presenting. So if you guys would please be in the picture as well, we're happy to have you here.
I don't know if this is the copy you sent from Ron, but it has me as the vice president. Gotcha. Thank you. You're welcome. I can fix that.
All right, thank you for indulging our desire to memorialize this with a picture. We will move forward with our budget update from Assistant Superintendent Greg Hart and Director of Financial Services, Amy Day.
Good evening, Board President Anderson Pearson, board members, and Superintendent Banner. This evening, we'll be presenting a budget update followed by the 25-26 budget development update. This is one of several presentations as we continue working towards building the developing next year's school budget. I've added the same slides, that is much louder, same slides from last month's budget update. As you can see at the end of April, our general fund balance snapshot shows a nice spike in April, representing the receipt of property taxes from our levy, coming in at $10.4 million. The next slide shows our general fund revenue. Again, you see the same spike in April, which is anticipated as part of the budget. And our general fund expenditures. This is a slight uptick, again, a timing of payment to invoices. We had a few more SPED invoices hit in April than the previous 2 months, similar to what happened last time in January. And this is our favorite slide, student enrollment. You'll see from last month, the green bar represents current month FTE, includes basic ed, running start, and open doors enrollment. The purple line is our average annual student enrollment, which is what we are funded on. Currently, we are trending pace with what we budgeted. And that is it for our current budget update. Questions about that? Yep.
A quick, there seems to be a rather, as the numbers trend kind of down towards the end of the year, is that, I don't know, is it due to like military moving? Is that what it usually is? Okay.
Typically, yeah, most school districts will see a decline towards the end of the year.
Because folks are.
Yeah.
There was a moment in time when it was a combination, and maybe still is, but I think primarily it's military moves, which you don't really get a say on those. But there was also this, and I'd have to look back, but there was this transiency in terms of apartment students that were living in apartments and maybe not able to pay their rent. And so after the winter months, the apartment complexes were able to then evict. And then students would move on, and our I-5 corridor was such that there was a lot of transiency in districts that were proximal to the I-5 corridor. So I say that only to say that there are other factors. I have not done a study on it recently, but I do remember that we were looking at both a combination of military moves as well as the transiency on the I-5 corridor.
Yeah, because the military moves, it seems like if folks were moving, then folks would also be coming to JBLM, but maybe they didn't have kids. I don't know.
Correct. When they move, they come, but it's not a 1-for-1
Yeah.
each time. And so you get a lot of movement at about this time. And then people coming might stop, like the people that are leaving, they may stop at home, wherever home is, and then move in for the next school year or when housing becomes available. And there's no hard and fast to that, but I know that there are variables that it doesn't end up being a 5 out, 5 in kind of a thing.
Who's moving in, the military person comes before the family comes sometimes. So that would delay that by, 3 months or 4 months or whatever. And I speak to that from experience because my dad would always go and then we'd show up, 5 months later or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And timing, right? East Coast schools are letting out already. West Coast is not, so. Okay.
Okay, so now let's do an update on next year's budget development. These are the preliminary enrollment projections we provided to you last month. We do expect a slight increase in enrollment at the secondary level due to a large 5th grade class moving into 6th grade. Moreover, birth rates since COVID have steadily declined, resulting in lower elementary projections. This graph shows our enrollment trend over the last several years. You'll see in the 1920 school year, we had well over 12,000 students. Then you see the sizable drop in the following year. This drop coincides with the pandemic in 2020. We're not alone in seeing this drop in enrollment. This was a statewide and nationwide trend, but you'll see over the last couple of years, the numbers have leveled off, and we're anticipating that to continue next year. The good news is that our district was conservative in our enrollment projections, which has helped avoid major budget shortfalls.
And again, I don't think it's just a Clover Park thing, but where did these kids go? Where did all these kids go? Because it's not birth rate, it's online. I mean, huh? The elementary kids went virtual? Wow, that's a lot of kids.
Homeschool's a big one.
We actually did a lot of pondering. We couldn't find them. We saw a second grade trend. I think we saw this big drop in second grade. We know again with the military, some folks decided that they were going to go spend COVID with their loved ones. But to be honest with you, I don't know that we had hard, fast data on where they went. We just knew they were gone and we weren't seeing them come back. But we did look at homeschool. We did look at all of those elements of where they could be. And we saw some upticks there. But
Don't they have to fill the paperwork out even if they homeschool or if they transfer to another school? Isn't there a release for attendance or something that goes on? Don't we get any data on
we
that at
still
all?
fight that with graduation rate. We're
Yeah.
still tracking kids who move and are considered negative transfers. Like we literally get on, look at Facebook, we look at all these different things to see where we can get a clue, and then we call that district. So the big drop was COVID and nobody was worried about sign out sheets at that point.
Okay. This slide shows our projected beginning fund balance for the 25-26 school year. Fund balance represents a snapshot of the district's financial position. You'll see at the bottom that we are projected to start the year with a $36.6 million fund balance. This includes the board's minimum required fund balance of 6%, which is about $15.5 million, which is shown at the top. Next, let's review our preliminary projected revenue for next year. You'll see the big piece in red, over $136 million. That represents the state general purpose funding, otherwise known as our basic ed funding. In dark green of $66.2 million is our state general or special purpose funding. This is where you'll find our special ed funding, our LAP funding, and other funding such as multilingual funding. In brown of $32 million is our federal funding. This funding includes our various title grants such as Title I, Title II, and Title III. Our federal special ed funding is also in this category. The next largest piece in light green of $25 million represents our local funding, otherwise known as our voter approved levy. The $4.3 million in yellow represents miscellaneous local revenues, with the majority of it being investment earnings. You'll see at the bottom right, we are projecting a total operating revenue of over $265 million.
Question, please. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, well, your mic turned on first. You want to go? Back a slide. Can you talk about restricted revenue?
So restricted revenue is fund balance or revenues that we can only use a certain way. So for example, the LAP funding from the state, we're only allowed to use that a certain way. And so we restrict it. We are legally required to restrict it in our fund balance.
And then on the current slide on the general fund revenue, are you accounting for the increase in SPED funding that was signed?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify. When we talk about the increase in SPED funding, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that while the state with that formula gave us about 1.4 or 1.2,
1.3, I believe.
$1.3 million more than what we had this past year. They also snuck under the radar a 10% or a sales tax on temporary agency staffing. And if the governor didn't, and I don't believe he did, veto that section of that bill that slid through within 10 days that nobody knew about, then that would cost us, if we just repeated last year's numbers of agency staffing at $8 million, 10% of that, it's 800,000. Essentially what it does is that would cut half of what they gave us away. and give it back to them. So again, those are things I want to make sure that we have on the table above board. We know it's doesn't sit well with me.
So just for transparency, what are agency hires?
So when you approve in your consent agenda usually it's not every month, but about this time, and you saw a few of them, quite a few of them, agency hires for transparency are when we cannot fill a position, whether that's a one-to-one para, a nurse, a related service position, then we seek an agency and we pay them to fill the position for us. So ultimately we pay their fees, et cetera. The last board meeting you heard that we were looking to do, actually, I think we approved that. One blanket agency that will fill, because it'll take away some of our work that we have to do and it'll streamline. So agency hire, hard to fill positions, can't fill positions, have to fill the positions. We go to an agency to get them filled.
And I feel like I bring this up every time, and I want to make sure that it's on the record. So if something goes awry, not here, but our federal funding, if we have, kind of a plan in place. I know some of our neighboring districts, not that their federal funding was pulled, but they got themselves into a little bit of a financial hiccup. And, everyone's like, how did this happen? How did this happen? But it can happen fairly quickly when things go south. It could go south. But, that's a lot of federal funding. If we lose funding, the neighboring districts would probably lose the same funding, but it does happen, right? There's a, Ivy League school. Oh, you're not getting your money anymore. And it's very real, especially since we live in Washington. So I just want to make sure that we are always planning that, and the community knows, we don't have any, authority over that federal money. So, if we get it, that's great. We continue our projects. But if we don't get all of that federal funding, then that ultimately means staffing and programs have to be cut.
And I appreciate this whole conversation. And I know that we kind of broke your stride, but this is important, right? For that future budgeting. It actually saves me a couple of slides on a future presentation. But with that being said, all indicators thus far have been, with regard to federal money, we should be okay for the 25-26 school year, but look out for 26-27. And so we are pulling together our forecasting team, our council team, to begin to look at what is, what might be, and what we might have to come to the board to talk about with regard to staffing and programming.
At the June board workshop, you'll see more details on the breakdown of expenditures. Here's a summary of the process on how we budget for expenditures. First, the budget is based on the board goals and priorities and tied to the superintendent's accountability plan. The school sites are funded first, and the schools have various sources of funding depending on their need. Any remaining funds are used to meet the needs of to operate the district. As we mentioned last month, we recently launched a thought exchange survey to the community to gain more insight into priorities to support student learning. Next month, we will show you how we are driving dollars towards those areas, as well as how school needs affect how the money is spent. And here is the schedule for the development of next year's budget. A few highlights: we held 2 community budget workshops, one in March and the second in May. We'll hold another budget workshop with the school board June 16th, so you can make an informed decision when it comes to time to vote on the adoption of the budget in July. Do we have any further questions?
That I'm laughing because usually 0 or 1. So I was just, did anyone attend? No. And when things aren't going, it's interesting because when things are going well, no one's listening. But then you can see, from the local schools, when things are not going well, then everybody shows up. So it's like, sometimes it's unfortunate because people, when things are smooth sailing, it's like, yeah, I don't need to go. But But that means we're doing something right too, because people don't have the concern. So yes, how do we get more people? But also it's a positive because people aren't concerned.
Conversation just since our last board meeting, there were great questions asked. And so I know in talking with Leanna and Greg, we've talked about how can we do this year round? How can we look at our budget workshop development schedule, sorry, not workshop, but budget development schedule, and look at how can we capture information, whether that's a QR code on a poster at a September parent night, right? That, you know, I always kind of say 2 is more than 1, 1 is more than none. And if we can start doing that in ways that are more convenient for folks, then maybe they go bloop and then they just answer the 3 or 4 questions. So we last meeting, I think, Dr. Kim, you asked a couple of questions around that. And so we've been pondering that as we're moving forward.
All right. Thank you.
Next, we will get a double dose of Deputy Superintendent Brian Labaugh, as well as his folks. Brian, I'm not sure I see, or is it just you tonight? Okay, so Brian's going to first talk about our business and marketing textbook adoption, and then he'll roll right into the opportunity to discuss on the policies up for adoption as per our WASDA review.
All right, so good evening, Board President, board members, and Superintendent. I'm going to give a quick update on the business and marketing textbook adoption process, which began in November 2022 after approval of the updated course frameworks by OSPI and approval by the CTE, or Career and Technical Ed Program Advisory Committee, to move forward. Prior to this presentation, you were provided an executive summary of the adoption process used by the College and Career Department in your board packet. Unfortunately, tonight, the director and supervisor are unable to be here, so I'll present the background information for them. So here are the members of the adoption committee. It's staff from all of the high school business and marketing programs participated, and it was led by the College and Career Readiness Supervisor, Demetria Hodges. So some major updates since May 28, 2024. So all of our textbook adoptions follow Board Policy and Procedure 2020. The current textbook is 13 years old. The board and community were able to review the pilot text prior to them being in the classroom on May 28, 2024. The texts have undergone 2 rounds of pilots and evaluation by teachers and students. After consideration of the feedback, the adoption committee recommended a text to move forward. Here's some feedback from teachers and students. I like this one from the student saying it's an interactive platform, was very engaging. One of the teachers mentioned the industry relevant projects that are a part of the online apparel simulation. In the next set of feedback, we have a student who liked how there was choices on how they can access their learning from the online platform with this text. And it could also be easily translated, translate the reading and the assignments to other languages. The teacher also liked how it was aligned to industry standards, and another student talked about how it connects to their other content areas like social studies, economics, reading and writing, and geography. Prior to considering this text for pilot, it was also screened for bias content using the OSPI screening tool and made available for public review. In April, the committee identified Marketing 6th edition by Cengage 2025 as the instructional material having high levels of rigor, ample support for various ability levels in alignment with state and industry standards. After completing the district curriculum material review process, the College and Career Readiness Department recommends the adoption of the above list of instructional materials for our 9th through 12th grade business and marketing program students to be implemented during the 25-26 school year. The board will be presented a resolution at the June 9 board meeting to approve the adoption of the Marketing 6th edition by Cengage 2025 as the instructional material beginning in the 25-26 school year. Thank you. And are there any questions?
Hi. Good evening. Thanks for the information. My question is how is the committee involved with the local career and technical ed programs at our community and technical colleges and like the PC3, the Pierce County? What does PC3 stand for? They're the group that
Yes,
puts
right.
together the high school CTE teachers and the college CTE teachers to make sure that everything's in alignment for dual credit.
A lot in one question. All right. So the business and marketing group has a committee within our CTE advisory. So they meet with them fall and spring, but they also have an online meeting during the winter. So they talk about current jobs that are coming available. What does the industry look like for the future? That advisory team. So we have one large CTE advisory team, but within there are programs of study. So the business and marketing group meets with that group. The supervisor, Demetria Hodges, does a lot of that behind the scenes work with the articulations with Clover Park Technical College or Pierce College or Bates Technical School. All of those are people that we go to look at for articulations or saying dual credit. So that course would count for this at this prospective college. And those students can get those credits for free. So there's a lot of work done at that. We use a state-approved framework as well. So for all our business and marketing classes. So that also helps with the articulations. The PC3 is also a way to say they've also done some articulation work. And so then if our state-approved framework is one of the frameworks that they've already done some work with, we get those articulations. So it's kind of a big global view of what the work is, but the teachers, one thing we've done with our partnership with Clover Park Technical School is started to have some of the professors or the teachers be part of our advisory. And so that has helped with some of those articulations and connections as well. That continues to grow, right? That's a big group of people that come together. But that is a way to help expand, what is the future looking like in this area of study? And then what are those future careers that are coming about?
Yeah, I appreciate your focus on the advisory boards, which make sure that the curriculum is up to industry standards. And so do they currently get dual credit for their marketing course?
So depending on the class, students get high school credit, right? And then they can also get the dual credit if for the corresponding college that it's articulated with. It's kind of complicated because some courses are Pierce College, some classes are Clover Park Technical College, and some are Bates Technical College.
And in the curriculum change, will students lose out on any dual credit, or would they gain any dual credit, or is it just neutral?
It's basically neutral. We're really looking at a textbook that's 13 years old. We're going to the 2025. That didn't change our framework. So our articulated framework we already have has not changed. There might need some adjustments now that they're going to the new text, but while they're waiting for the text to get adopted, I'm sure they're doing some of that work already, saying, it's going to be chapter 5 instead of chapter 6, something like that.
My question is it an actual textbook or is this an online platform?
It's both. So it has an online platform and an actual textbook. So we would be buying access to the online as well as the physical hard copy of a text.
Thank you.
Quick question. So this must cover more than just one course, right? There's marketing 1, marketing 2, and then does it cover other courses as well?
Well, it goes through the full 4 years. So it'd be the 9 through 12 business and marketing program.
Seeing no other questions, we will have Brian lead us through the policy review by WASDA. Wanted to give you opportunity to discuss if you had questions or if you wanted to discuss as a board, because this does come to the board June 9th for adoption, or if the board was so inclined and needed more time, we can always move it to another meeting out.
All right, so good evening again. Tonight, I plan to review where the board is at in the review and update of the district's board policies and address any questions or concerns you have about the policies that were for first reading on May 12th. A quick update of where we've been, where we are at, and where we still need to go in terms of the review of the board's policy manual. So to date, we've reviewed and completed the 1,000 series and the 3,000 series. This round is the 5,000 series, leaving the remaining policy series to review 2,000, 4,000, and 6,000. Kind of odd that we did all the odds and now we're going to wait to do all the evens. In addition, there were 3 policies that were presented in May that are about some policies that WASDA reviewed that are changes to state legislation or maybe federal legislation that are in that mix. So it's all the 5,000 plus 3 others. Here's a list of all the ones that have edits and updates. And so if there were any questions or comments about any of these, we could address those now, or as I say later in the slide deck, you can always let the board president know, and then the board president can get that information to the superintendent, and then the superintendent's council can work on any updates or edits that you see in those 5,000.
Right now for questions.
Well, you don't have to. If you had some right now.
Probably change them as legislative came out or whatever it may be, but WASDA did not suggest. So if there are questions on.
Well, this series 5,000. So this page is the ones that have edits. Sorry, the next slide is no updates.
Okay, so okay, so I would like to discuss policy 5201, drug-free schools, community, and workplace.
I just have to find it.
Don't see that. Am I missing that somewhere? Oh, got it.
They're at the end of the presentation. There's a stapled packet.
Sorry, I took mine out last meeting
And
so I could have the ones with the red. So I like how we added workplace and that, it's very specific. But my first wonder is up at the beginning, the board has an obligation to staff, students, and citizens to take reasonable steps to provide a reasonably safe workplace. Just wondering about the repetition, not that reasonable isn't okay, but it just didn't really read well.
Reasonable.
52.
About this part of the pack.
Yeah, it's about halfway through. It's at
It's the
the
first one.
beginning. It says reasonable and then reasonably.
Okay, so I agree that it's repetitive. Maybe we can find a different word, but I do think that they mean different things. They're saying take reasonable steps to ensure reasonably safe. So they are 2 different things using the same word.
Okay.
But I think reasonable is the right word here because it is a little bit vague, but it's like do what you can to,
Mhm.
No,
make it
absolutely.
reasonable.
Yeah. And then later on if you go to prohibited behavior, letter A, I just need some schooling on why marijuana is included in the policy, since in Washington state, marijuana is legal.
Here.
It really begins to be, it's not legal.
Oh. Perfect.
Just reporting to work under any sort of, so just because it's legal here, so is alcohol, but if you show up, under the influence, you're going to be.
No, I just meant there are medicinal marijuana varieties that people could be on for pain and things that don't have the same effect or
Oh, yeah.
impact.
Yeah, but okay, then in that case, yes, that would
Yeah,
be the
no, but
federal.
yes, not social. And then I was just curious also in letter C, the new letter C, why the word felony was crossed off and then it was replaced with crime.
My guess would be maybe it's any class of, rather than maybe this, I'm assuming WASDA made this change. They probably lowered it down, right? So if you commit a crime at all, where before it was just in the felony category.
Got you. That makes sense. And then my last one here, just as a general thing, if there's his, her, it's going to be changed.
Yes, I try to catch them, but when you search for his or her, you get
Oh, I know.
this there. So a lot of combinations of that, but I found one that's on a policy that's on my desk. I've got to correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Probably reach out to WASDA and indicate as much as well, especially
they've
since we
been-
pay them for these, but I mean,
I've noticed they've been updating them as well, but if it's, I don't know.
yeah, there's going to be some that slide through that
Slide
get caught
through.
like this, right? Yeah.
All right. So then the next slide just indicating.
I have
Oh,
a
sorry.
question. So it seems like the 5,000 policies are about staff. So does our HR department get involved in looking at some of these policies as well and making sure that it's going to be good
No
for
way.
them to do their work?
No way.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking over
actually,
at you. Okay.
In actuality, as we presented these, well, we all look at them for our zone of expertise, but this one was, Lori had a little extra lift
Mhm.
on this one and gave a lot of feedback through the council.
So when we get the
communication.
changes from WASDA, all of council reviews all of the policies prior to them coming to you. So we have an opportunity to provide some feedback. So in the case of human resources, there was quite a bit of feedback on a couple different policies.
There, I will just openly, transparently say, on council, there was a sigh of relief when we said these are mostly HR.
Yeah. There are times coming with the 2, 4, and 6. All right. Also, we did provide you with all the other 5,000 policies that have no edits or updates to them as well. We did this because we really wanted in the full adoption of the 5,000 series to also update these to a 2025 date, right? So while WASA didn't find any changes, we're also looking to have approval so that we can say that they were all revised as of June 9, 2025, or whatever date that you do adopt them.
I would imagine there'd be some pronoun updates that would be needed in those that say there's no edits or updates to make them gender neutral.
Yeah, I can review those again. Then there were the 3 that we talked about. I talked about a little bit earlier. 2020 and 2021, both policies in the 2000 series were updated to comply with 2 engrossed substitute bills from the legislature, ESB 5462, which is promoting inclusive learning standards and instructional materials in public schools, and ESHB 2331, modifying requirements for public school instructional and supplemental instructional materials. So those were the changes made to those 2 policies. And then policy 3206 was updated to comply with state law and align with the 2020 Title IX rules. So this policy has been going back and forth. It was updated to the 2024. Now it's being reinstated to its previous district policy in alignment with the 2020 Title IX rules from the federal government and state law.
I'm going to say the same thing Brian just said. Under Joe Biden, those Title IX rules shifted they were put into effect under Donald Trump. They shifted back and now they're being put into effect or reverted back. It's kind of a yo-yo, but it's what we're, as was said earlier, we don't have control over that.
As
To be clear, the revisions give pregnant and parenting students less protection than what was in place. Well, the reversion gives them less protection than what the revision did.
one thing is kind of interesting to know, we didn't really have that policy prior to 2020. So while it gives them some more protection, we didn't, or less protection than the 2024 version. It also added it to our series. So like I said before, if you see something that comes up, let the board president know, and then she will get to the superintendent, and then we can address those. I'll look at those ones that didn't have any edits or updates from WASA, and I'll look for those gender neutral or his or statements. Once again, it's always good to go through them with a fine tooth comb one more time. So
I have a comment or I really like the addition in policy 5253, maintaining professional staff student boundaries, where the board recognizes that staff may have familial and pre-existing social relationships with parents or guardians and students. This has the potential. I'm glad it's just clarified. That's all I want to say about that.
yeah, that's a good point too. In the staff boundaries, right? Staff and student boundaries, right? There are, if you live in the district, there are, your children go to school in the district, there are some relationships that are outside of what would be normal staff student boundaries.
Right. Not to prolong things, but I can give you a story. My daughter, when she was in 8th grade, was taking geometry at the high school. One of her peers, who's one of her friends, who I knew their family as well, didn't have the ability to get to the high school in the morning. I think I was an assistant sup at the time.
Yeah.
And so with the current policy that we had, it's still recognized, but this is a little more explicit. And so what I did is I went to HR, and then I went to my supervisor, and I said, this family that I know, I can pick this young lady up on the way to school. Her parents have requested it because they knew that Mia was going to Lakes for geometry. And had we not been able to do that, she wouldn't have been able to take geometry at Lakes High School, just because their family didn't have the means. They had to go to work, right? They had to do things. And so we had that ability. This makes it more explicit that there are those types of relationships, and transparency is the way to deal with those things always, right?
I used the term gender neutral earlier, and just as I was sitting with it, I'm like, that's not the term that I want, because I don't think gender is neutral. I think we want to be gender inclusive. And I just wanted to throw that out there and correct myself.
Any other questions? That would conclude the district's reports for this evening.
Thank you. Don't get too excited. We do have an executive session.
Exciting session.
Very exciting. We wanna, okay, so but before we get there, sorry, this new format really messes with me, but that's okay. Just a note on the meeting calendar. So for June, please take a look at your calendar. Both Superintendent Banner and I were gone during our regular workshop time. So we changed the June 23rd workshop to June 16th. Now, if someone has a problem with that, let me know, but I will be out of the state for a couple weeks, and he'll be gone too. So, and right, it's on the 16th. Yeah. And then, okay. Yeah. And so and then there's a proposed change for, oh, and also for June, there used to be a 2-day meeting and it was like, I just felt like it was kind of drug out. So we're like, why not just do one? And if we say a little later, that's fine. Rather than taking up 2 of everybody's, weeknights. Okay, yes. And the proposed change for the July 14th meeting, it was requested that we change it to July 7th because July is when a lot of staff get to take their vacation time. And if it's in the 14th, it's right smack in the middle of the month.
I'll be able to attend that one if we
Yeah.
change the date.
Okay. Does anyone else have a conflict? Okay, so no worries there. I just want to make sure that everyone can have their vacation time. So, all right. There's that. Just a reminder, graduations are coming up. A long day on the 5th. But it's a fun and exciting time. We do have an executive session, as I mentioned. It will be, I think I'm going to say 30 minutes. It might be closer to 20, but instead of coming back here and extending the time, I'm just going to say 30 minutes for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's contract extension and then the evaluation kind of. They go hand in hand. So we will be back in 30 minutes or so. just, we're not voting. It just, there's three of us. Are we unmuted? Oh, I am. Okay, yeah. Sorry. We need to extend executive session for another 15 minutes. So we will be back at 7:30. We're back at 7:28. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by everyone. So moved by Director Caldwell, seconded by Director Kim. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.